Ghost, I definitely get you on the Stark music hitting. Stark music's just good. I've played the King of the North for Rob. I've played the King of the North, or really it's the John reveal that he's Rhaegar and Lyanna's child. What can I say? The Starks have some pretty good tracks. Definitely, I think my favorite. I think theirs, the Lannister tracks, and also Daenerys' tracks are pretty good. But yeah, so we are into our scene-by-scene analysis of episode 3, and we're going to talk about it. For those that missed the after-episode stream, which I don't blame you, it was at midnight my time. I was not planning on going live, which I'll explain in this stream, because I didn't feel like talking about it last night. I was just tired and wanted to get through my thoughts, but yeah, so let's back up a second. Let's just do some explaining. By the way, hi Jim as well. Dakota also is not going to be a fan of that song. But let's just do some backing up a little bit. Backing up. So I originally was not going to be streaming this weekend at all because I was supposed to be out of town Friday, Saturday, Sunday, get back this basically today in the morning. And that didn't end up happening. The trip we were going to go on, we drove 5 hours there. Our Airbnb was basically trash. The cleaning people just didn't show up, apparently. So then it's one of those things where it's like, okay, well, now you're basically stranded 5 hours away from home. Have to hurry up, try to go to all these hotels and try to book a room for that day. Yeah, and then the Airbnb was not going to be done until like the next day, and at that point it's just like you might as well just go home. So then drove 5 hours back, all while I have arthritis, so driving extended periods of time is not great for me. But yeah, so just extremely tired, a very long weekend, and I was home yesterday, but I wasn't going to be able to stream with Ricky because time just didn't add up. I had other things going on, but I watched the episode at like probably 2 hours after it came out. Watched it and I was like, man, it's controversial enough that I wanted to talk about it with you guys. So yeah, but no, it's all good, guys. It could have been much worse given I didn't really tell you guys the full story, but it could have been much worse given the area we were in was not a good area. It could have been worse. At least everybody got home safe and all that. But yeah, just a little disappointing. But yeah, one thing the show series has done is amazing for the soundtracks for House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones. But yeah, I agree. I think House of the Dragon and Game of Thrones music have been great. I do think Game of Thrones music stands out a little more than House of the Dragon. Like, the only House of the Dragon theme that I really get attached to, that I can like distinctively remember, is Alicent's theme. I think it's my favorite theme of House of the Dragon. But yeah. Thank you, Little Brownie. I like your name, by the way. But yeah, all good. So let's get into the episode. Let's talk about it. And go scene by scene, because last night, or I guess it was today's stream, because earlier stream today, I talked a lot about some of the negative stuff about the episode, and so I want to kind of take a step back a little bit, because for the majority of the episode, this was a very good episode. There was a lot of great work with characters, visuals, visual storytelling, dialogue. They did a really good job in a lot of different aspects of the show. Even in terms of setting up like how dragons are efficient in warfare, how it changes war. It's not as simple as this army meets this army. It's, okay, you now can't travel during the day. You can't travel without cover and all that stuff with Bela. So I think there was a lot of stuff they did well in this episode. And I think, because this episode's disappointing for me personally because of the end of it, it continues to have the same trend. That's why I had the title and the thumbnail the way it was. Because it just feels like more of the same. It feels like we do all this good work throughout the episode, and then we continuously, have an episode where the ending is very, some people like it, some people don't like it. It's just one of those things where it's like, I wish it was just an ending that everybody could like. Like episode 2, everybody liked episode 2 for the most part. And we just keep getting these episodes, just like season 1. Season 1 was the same, where it's, you have a great build up, and then the end just kind of falls flat. But let's go through it all. Let's start from the beginning and work our way through it. So we opened on this episode in a really interesting part, being the Burning Mill plot, the Blackwood and Bracken conflict. And I thought this was the perfect way to start out the episode, right? Because the last thing, we're kind of seeing in episode 2 is the Cargill twins and their deaths. And it's kind of being this idea of like this pointless bloodshed, tearing apart brothers and all these things, and the absolutely horrid violence of this war and what it's going to cause. And so when you have this thing like the Brackens and the Blackwoods, you have the situation where you have two sides, two families that hate each other so much that we don't even know the truth of why they hate each other, right? It's kind of been lost to time. It's just generation after generation. It's teaching your children to hate the Brackens, and it just continues and continues. So a conflict like this, it highlights that nonsensical war, that this was not even really because of Rhaenyra and Alicent. Yes, that might be some of the broader things going on, but it's this deep-rooted excuse to attack the other because, well, they both are basically calling the other going for the wrong side. And so this war is going to be excused, right? If the Blackwoods and Brackens go at it, both sides are going to look at it and go, oh, they're just trying to get a victory or whatnot. Like, it's exactly like what that, Aegon's council talks about later in the episode, where it's like, was this really a victory for us? Even if, the Brackens won or whatever, like, it wasn't really a victory. It was just nonsensical slaughter. And so one thing that I think Ricky pointed out that I didn't even really think about in the episode about why they don't show the Battle of the Burning Mill, which I thought was great, was don't show it because it's pointless, right? The actual battle itself doesn't mean anything. It's just a loss of life for a hatred of families that have gone back, back and back and back. So I really liked that idea that that's why they maybe cut the Burning Mill sequence, because it's not, why glorify the battle? Why, go against George R. Martin's anti-war themes? Show why it starts and the conclusion, right? That this just petty, arguing between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. And I really liked that they added some nuance to it, right? I talked about this in my review that I'm going to have up probably tomorrow for the episode for Patreons and members. But I like that they gave the Brackens not as much like they're just the bad guys in this episode, right? Because I think one thing George R. Martin does that I'm not a huge fan of is the Blackwood-Bracken conflict seems very one-sided in terms who's the good guys, who's the bad guys. Like, it just feels like a weird conflict because we never hear of a Bracken that, like, is distinctively like, oh yeah, this is a good guy. Like, this is a guy that's like a really respectable guy and all this stuff. No, we never hear that. We only hear how the Brackens are kind of arrogant, or they're bloodthirsty, or they're cowards, or whatever, and the Blackwoods are the opposite. So I liked that we got some nuance here with this conflict, that it's just this petty, like, land dispute of maybe even a couple feet, and that leads to an entire battle that gets hundreds or even thousands killed. I thought that was a really good way to open up the episode. Hi Matthew, how are you? I'm doing all right. I'm feeling better. It's been a long work day for me in terms of my internship, and then getting stuff for YouTube, because I didn't really have the time to get a lot of stuff done over the weekend and get stuff prepared right after the episode. So I did a lot of my stuff covering the episode today, when I usually do it on Sunday nights. Sunday nights are usually like really a lot of stuff is going on for me, like watch the episode, hurry up, get on stream with Ricky, stream for like an hour, rewatch the episode while doing my notes for the stream for the next day, and all that. So it was just a weird, just a busy time today when it's usually Sunday. But what are you guys having for dinner? I'm curious. Blackwood is a wannabe Starkhouse. You're not wrong. My entire body cringes whenever I hear a character say the Song of Ice and Fire. I don't blame you, Andrew. It's not one of my favorite things either in the show that it's kind of introduced. I'm not a big fan of the whole Aegon's Dream and the Song of Ice and Fire stuff. I'm not a huge fan of that in the show, so I don't blame you on that. I kind of felt bad for the Bracken kid. Seemed a little unwilling to throw down. He seemed like an arrogant kid. He seemed like a kid when you're that age, and you have a sword, and you're this, you're gonna become whatever. And you've been programmed into your brain that you're supposed to hate the Blackwoods and all this stuff. And you see him, and it's like, the Blackwood, guy, Davos Blackwood, doesn't help the situation. He actively pushing them and all this stuff. And he comes off as the antagonist in that situation, which I think is interesting, right? Take that spin on it, right? Where we saw, before, right? When you had the Blackwood-Bracken conflict that was foreshadowed in season 1, it seemed like the Brackens were kind of the aggressor. I like that it's just showing that both sides, there is no good guy here. This is what I wish we kind of got from the Blackwoods and the Brackens, kind of in the book more. We don't really get that. I don't know. Skipping the battle reminded me of earlier season 1 of Game of Thrones battles. Didn't have the budget, but still got the message across to work from it. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? I was somebody, I said this on my live stream last night. It just wasn't needed. You didn't need the battle. As cool as it would have been to see it, it's not something that like involves any of our main characters, any of our named characters that people really care about. It just doesn't matter. So why spend all that budget on something like that when you don't need it? So that's kind of the way I look at it, where it was like, you know, a combination of that's kind of my thoughts, and I also applied some of Voice of Old Town's logic because I thought he had a very good point about the intro to this part of the episode. I thought it was definitely one of the stronger opens to the episodes. Ooh, Matthew, I have spaghetti pretty much every single day. I love my spaghetti. Spaghetti is probably one of my favorite things to eat. All right, so let's move on. So after we see this stuff, we see the carnage, the Battle of the Burning Mill. We cut to the twins being buried in the Cargills, and we see the carnage, or not. I was about to say something else, but it's a great idea, right? Because you come off of the battle at the Burning Mill, which is this pointless conflict. It's just this loss of life, these people that, you know, are have all of their different roles in society, people looking and depending on these people that died for this pointless little skirmish. And then you see the Cargills, and you're like, these are two people that, you know, they were put against each other because of their ideologies, because of, you know, queens and kings and Kristen Cole ordering things to get one person killed or another. And it was this meaningless slaughter. These people didn't need to die, and they died because of this conflict, being kind of two of the first kind of casualties of the war. But I also like that when Jace is talking about, you know, Aegon's Eric anyway, that, you know, he was a villain, he did all this stuff, and Rhaenyra sits back and goes, no, that's not the case at all, right? He was following what he was told to do. And so there's a strength in that, right? Even when you're doing something that you're not wanting to do, you go through it because you took a vow to that person. Whether you believe that person should be in charge or not, they still followed through with that. And so Rhaenyra respects that. I like that, where there is that kind of duality of the situation where Rhaenyra can see that. And that's why I think that my biggest issue when it comes to like stuff like, you know, Rhaenyra going to King's Landing in this episode is so jarring to me, because Rhaenyra has such wisdom and things like this, where I think a lot of people would take Jace's viewpoint, right? You know, this person tried to kill you, and here is Rhaenyra defending him. It's that wisdom there that I think is what, you know, drove someone like me off of what they did at the end of this episode, because it's inherently a dumb decision to do. It takes all logic out of it. So I thought that was a nice little moment. But then we also get Rhaenys' speech to Rhaenyra, and it's weird because this scene with Rhaenys trying to talk Rhaenyra down about peace and this idea of, you know, what started the war. You can look at all these things. When do you justify was the opening part of the Dance of the Dragons? What really marked the start of it? And you can go back, right? I talked about this also in my like video that'll be coming out tomorrow. But like, how far back can you say that the dance actually starting? Was it the Great Council kind of thing, where you have it where a male comes before a female with Rhaenys' and Viserys' issue? You know, is it Luke taking Aemon's eye like Rhaenys suggests? Is it Maegor when he takes the High Tower? Was that foreshadowing to the High Towers, you know, trying to get on the throne? Was that, there's so many things you can look at, like Aenys, his stance towards the faith, and how, you know, he let the High Towers grow very strong and have a lot of influence over the realm and all these things. Like, I like that idea. It's just the problem with it, and I've kind of sat on it a little bit more, and after, you know, rewatching it, it is kind of jarring that this speech is coming from Rhaenys, given her action in episode 9, where she destroys the Sept, or wherever they were at. She kills a bunch of people, spilling a lot of blood, and here she is, you know, blaming on everybody else. They're the ones spilling blood when she's killed more people than most of the people in Rhaenyra's camp. She could have ended the war right away, you know, killing Aegon, killing all of them, but she doesn't. So it just comes off as very jarring, right? It feels like a speech that should have come from somebody else. Because the problem is, you know, Rhaenys, and I love her character, that moment in episode 9 has really damaged the character, the way you can view that character. And so something I didn't really notice on my first watching really impacted me on my second watching. I wasn't a big fan of the way it was done, because it's weird, because that speech makes sense if you take out what she does in episode 9. Because that is what I think Rhaenys would say in, like, the book version of the character. It's something that is very Rhaenys-like. But at the same time, it's jarring because of her actions. And also, it's like you're saying, yes, peace is great and all, right? You want to get peace, but look at the situation going on, right? Like, how do you expect to make peace with Alicent, right? And Rhaenys basically says this, like, Otto Hightower isn't in charge anymore. It's Aegon, Aemond, it's the Youngblood that are taking over. So what makes you think Alicent is going to let you create peace when you just killed her grandson? Whether it was her, Daemon, wherever she thinks it is, it still happened. It's just like, there just seems to be some lapse of judgment that they're pushing this event of Rhaenyra and Alicent getting together, and I just don't think it adds up exactly. But that ends my little spiel. Let me check a chat because I went on there for a little bit of time. I kind of agree. It's like, obviously the Blackwoods and Brackens are gonna fight. Like, how surprising. Agreed. Right? It's like one of those things where it's like they look for any excuse to fight. Agreed, Vought. I agreed. That's true, Ghost, on the burning mill stuff. After sitting on it for a bit, I still think that ending was pointless. Arya, I'm still kind of the same idea. Also, I just find it very weird that the show or this episode wasn't called something like Harrenhal or the Ghosts of Harrenhal or something like that. I think that would have been more interesting, but they fumbled bad with episode 9 of season 1. Makes Rhaenyra sound like an asshole. I agree, and that's the weirdest part, right? Is because if you take out that part, if you take out episode 9, what she does, and you kind of forget that happened, you sit here and you're just like, okay, yeah, this makes way more sense coming from Rhaenys. It makes sense from the character of Rhaenys. It makes sense of, but not in terms of the context of the show and what they did with their character in episode 9. It's just a weird thing. I don't know, Arya. That's a good point, though. I agreed. I agree, Ghost, on that idea. Agreed, Violet. It just put Rhaenyra at a risk that didn't make any sense. Like, if you take a step back and you think about it for 2 seconds, and this is the thing, right? If they had established Rhaenyra as being more impulsive, of giving into her emotion a lot more than, her being, cool, calm, and collected and stuff like that, then this would have made more sense, right? Like, when you look at the idea of Daemon going to King's Landing, that makes more sense in terms of the context of the show because he's someone that's very hot-tempered. He's someone that doesn't think before he acts a lot of times. He kind of acts out. So him going to King's Landing makes sense, albeit it was done not the best way in Blood and Cheese. But then you take that with Rhaenyra, who's shown a remarkable sense of keeping herself collected after all these tragedies, all these things happening. She's been kind of the cool to Daemon's fire. And that's interesting because that's not Rhaenyra of the book, right? Rhaenyra is not like that at all, right? And so when you have that aspect of Rhaenyra, it just doesn't play right into what they were going with the version of Rhaenyra that they've created in the show. It doesn't seem to, like, logically add up to me. Wish I showed the battle, but it got the message across. Dylan, yeah, I definitely would have liked to see the battle, of course, as a book reader, but I get why they didn't do it, and I still think it actually works very well that they didn't. Glad I can make it. I had to rewatch the episode real quick. Well, Ryder, what do you think now? After you've, after you've watched it, what did you think? Shouldn't be easy to sneak into King's Landing during a war. I don't like how easy they keep getting in. Yeah, agreed. And also the thing is, like, they don't explain it really. It's just like, okay, Rhaenyra somehow gets on a fisher's boat dressed as a septa or whatever. Like, when did this happen, right? Was this a boat that was, recognizable in King's Landing? All this stuff, like, it just seems very suspicious the way it all happened. Especially because there's a blockade going on right now. I don't know. I just find, I don't know. I found it a very weird thing. Matthew, we'll get to that scene with Helena and Alicent, but I did think I did really like that scene as well. I think once Rhaenyra loses, people should get more fiery. Yeah. I just think, to me, it's disappointing because this is not really Rhaenyra. I mean, you can say, okay, maybe in Fire and Blood you can say that this Rhaenyra is maybe a little bit closer to House of the Dragon than I think it is. I just don't think so. And so when you have such a 180 of what the character is in the book, where like Rhaenyra is a Targaryen, like she has elements of Visenya, she has elements of Maegor, of Daemon, but then she also has those other elements of like Aenys, and she has other elements of those characters. Like it just they haven't really done that in the show yet, right? You see like little glimpses of it here and there, but it just I don't know. Agreed, right? Especially when you think about Blood and Cheese, what just happened, Wiley, right? Like any boat would be searched. Think about what happens in Clash of Kings. Any ship coming into the harbor is being seized, right? Not only for their own navy, but for other reasons. So part of that just kind of, it hurts your world. It makes your world feel smaller, and you have to like justify things in your head. Stuff with Daemon was good, but probably my least favorite episode of the entire series so far. I don't know if I'd go the entire series, but in terms of this season, I would say so, Ryder. I still think my least favorite episodes are the Stepstones and episode 9 of last season. I still think they are both worse. The show and the book aren't of the same, but it is still an interesting thought that in the show, Rhaenyra is so calm about everything, but in the book, she's falling into grief and anger. Yeah, they're just two separate entities, right? And I think you can't say, oh, that maybe that the Maesters played into something. But it's like, no, there's enough witnesses to understand where Rhaenyra was. But is it a hot take if I say I do not like show Rhaenys after season 1, episode 9? I don't think so. I think most people in the community didn't like that scene. That, to me, I didn't dislike Rhaenys as a character. I disliked the writing, because I could tell that was something just done for spectacle. Agreed. Fire and Blood. Rhaenyra is much more about Fire and Blood, but the issue that holds her back is like her children. She doesn't want her children, being killed. Isn't the goal being blocked? Yes. You're making me realize the ending was kind of terrible. It was bad. I don't defend the ending, right? I can understand why people like it, but I just, I can't. Have the Iron Islands picked a side? So far, they have not. There has not been any real movement for the Iron Islands yet. Maybe they're probably gearing up for war, right? You see all this warring about to start. You're going to build up your forces. You're going to get ready for something. So probably mobilization is probably happening. If you think about the main story, right? Once the War of the Five Kings starts to look like it's going to break out, and you have Robb winning battles, Balon Greyjoy starts to summon his fleet to the Iron Eye, or not the Iron, to Pike and all that stuff, and they start preparing for war. So that's kind of probably where we're at, the same in the show as well. Apparently, according to some fans, this had the worst writing. I think in terms of this season, the ending was the worst writing so far that we've seen of this season. Agreed, Ghost. Rhaenyra was annoying me. I mean, part of Rhaenyra's inaction is like accurate to the book, and I don't have a problem with that, right? I understand why she would be so passive and things like that, but I mean, Arcana, that just comes down to the execution of Blood and Cheese. I've talked about this at lengths, but Blood and Cheese just did not hit its ceiling, which would have made it a better moment. It would have felt more impactful, but so Joey, this is the point I'm getting to. Rhaenyra has pretty strong emotional intelligence. She is very strong in terms of her actual wisdom in terms of certain things. So she is willing to realize that Alicent didn't kill Luke. That was Aemond. She is willing to put that aside and be rational about that. And so that's why, again, it comes back to this whole idea that she's willing to be very emotionally intelligent, understanding a lot of things, but at the same time, she doesn't understand the peril and danger of going to King's Landing for a very high chance that this doesn't go well. So it's kind of that idea. Yeah, Space. I don't think that's a bad analogy at all. Do you think the consistency is bad since these episodes are the hit or I think in terms of the consistency, this is the way you look at it. It's been the same since episode 1 of House of the Dragon. It's been all the way up to here. There's a few episodes that are outliers that are like they're good pretty much through and through. Don't have a big problem with them. But so far, House of the Dragon does have a consistency, and or I would just say they don't usually succeed on the big moments. They do all the small moments right. They even make some of the small moments really big moments that people love. But they struggle with the big moments, adapting, those big moments of the story. The Green Council. The death of Joffrey Lonmouth in season 1. Laenor's disappearance or death. Aegon's coronation. All like they struggle with the big moments, but they do a lot of the small stuff right. I'm getting Jaime and Bronn vibes from Kristen Gwaine. Yeah, fair enough. I love the Aftermath of the Blood and Cheese episode 2 was so good. I did love the Aftermath of the Blood and Cheese. I will agree it goes. I think they did a good job of like that impact having effects on things. But episode 2 was really good. I will agree. Agreed, Matthew. But unfortunately, that's because they kind of did a time skip, so we didn't get to see that. Well, ditto. I'm assuming a Dark Sister is actually with Bloodraven if we're talking the normal timeline. So I would say somebody did go after it, but I don't know. Rhaenyra's face when Bela mentioned Kristen. Yes, that was very funny. Also, the fact that Alicent and Helena don't have any guards, especially after it was just just after there was an attempted assassination. Kind of weird. What do you think of the Conqueror's armor fitting Aegon? I don't know. It doesn't really seem right, given that Aegon seems to be not as overpowering as someone like Oris Baratheon, for instance, but he seems to be a very big dude from all the descriptions that we've gotten of the character. Kind of seems weird, but all right. I need to continue on with getting through our scenes. We're kind of getting all over the place. Let's continue. So we then skip to Criston Cole feeling kind of the weight of his actions. Right, he seems like he's just having kind of a little bit of a breakdown, right? Where it's like, okay, he put this plan in motion. It did not go well. Makes him look really bad. He got a fellow Kingsguard member killed for pretty much no reason. Doesn't look good. But he has to go to a council meeting because he's now Hand of the King. Obviously, he's got duties he has to do. While going to the council, he sees some of the new Kingsguard members. They're just not taking their job seriously because they were appointed by Aegon. They're just kind of his friends. Again, not taking their role seriously. Biggest comparison you can think about is like the Tyrells and the Baratheons under Renly's camp is kind of the easiest comparison there. But Cole goes to the council and, they're talking about the Blackwood and Bracken conflict and the result and how, they've had this feud forever, and this, technically you could say is a victory, but at the same time, it's not. Both sides have decimated each other. It's just a lot of loss of life. They discuss what to do, right? What is our action? What are we going to be doing now? Aegon wants to do something about this. And they discuss a couple routes, right? Send a Raven to Lord Tully, trying to get the Riverlands on their side. They could, again, we get another mention of Daemon. They should wait for him and the Hightower forces to come up from the south. They should maybe wait for the forces in the west, the Lannister forces, to then attack the Riverlands, similar to like the normal story. And everybody just is like talking over each other, thinking they're right. And it really shows that Otto Hightower isn't here. There's no order here. Nobody's kind of stepping up to like shut all this down and this bickering. And so Alicent is kind of forced to do it. And it's not great. It's not great. But we see then this is when Criston Cole speaks up. He says he's going to lead an army and they will take Harrenhal. Again, action, which is interesting because, yes, in a sense, he's right. Harrenhal is the key to the Riverlands. It's the biggest castle. It can have the most amount of men. It's a central location. Very vital. But trying to take Harrenhal without a dragon is going to be very difficult, right? Think about Harrenhal. It's one of the best defensible castles. So, it's going to be kind of a struggle. But, with that being said, Alicent also is not happy about this either. And we know Aemon's going to stay to protect the city, but Aegon wants to come with them. And that's not the best course of action. Everybody is not really pleased by that. And that continues back into our Rhaenyra plot. So Rhaenyra and Mysaria talk about the last kind of episode, and I was actually right, by the way. You guys did not think I was right, but I was right. Mysaria turned back. She tried to basically alert people, and they didn't take her seriously at first, but she still tried. She came back. Her and Rhaenyra have a conversation. Mysaria goes into her service because she believes in Rhaenyra as a ruler. Very similar to Varys and Daenerys. It feels almost like the same plot point, but just a little different given Mysaria's position, but same motivations, right? Trying to get a ruler that actually is good for the common people and all those things. It's not like the most incredible writing ever because we've kind of already seen it, but it still serves. It's still good. It's a good moment where, Rhaenyra is getting people on her side because of her actions, and, she's the hero, more or less. We then get to see probably my favorite plotline of the episode, Daemon and Caraxes taking Harrenhal. It's pretty easy, but at the same time, Daemon seems to be haunted the entire time he's here, hearing things. Harrenhal, its scale looks super huge, right? It feels massive. Like, you could never really truly fill up the castle. But at the same time, every shot we get of Daemon, it seems like he's kind of closed in, as if the walls are closing in on him. I want to just say the cinematography for this section of the story is beautiful. The design is fantastic. It gives you this eerie feeling. So Daemon is just kind of wandering all these halls until he meets the Castellan Simon Strong, who is fantastic in his role, by the way. Just a very charismatic performance by Simon Strong. Well, of Simon Strong. I'm not sure the actor's name. I'm not good on names. Does a fantastic job. He bends the knee to Daemon, and later on, we're going to also see, Daemon talking with him. What is his rationale? Why is he so quick to go to Daemon's side? Now, one part of it is Daemon has Caraxes right outside, but the other part of it is, okay, the suspicious nature of, Lionel and Harwin's death, right? Who gets to benefit? Well, Larys does, because now he is now in name Lord of Harrenhal. Very suspicious, right? Given that this was caused by a fire, doesn't seem that likely. And so this is the part of the story that's interesting because it connects directly to Fire and Blood. We have all these different accounts of what actually occurred there, right? Some people thought it was Daemon, some people thought it was Larys, and people thought it was Corlys. And so when you actually do have that here where people are questioning what actually happened, some people thinking maybe it was an accident, and you have it here where Simon Strong just doesn't think that at all. He thinks it was straight up Larys, and that's why he's willing to help Daemon. Daemon himself also wants to be titled, as a king, and this, narcissistic stuff going on as he's kind of split from Rhaenyra for now. And he also talks about trying to rally the Riverlands. Same idea as what the Greens are going through. How do you do that? Do you talk to the Tullys? Do you try and go out and conquer? All of that. I really do like the Daemon plot in this episode. It should have been the main focus. Should have been the ending of the episode, as I've said multiple times, but unfortunately we did not go that way. Also, yes, Arya, I agree. The fact that we haven't seen Sunfire is a crime. I agree. Does Alicent love Helena? I don't know. Like, Alicent seems like she cares for her children, but in a very weird way. Like, she does not seem like the type of person that should have been a mother. That's the way I can feel about that. I don't know. I agree, Arya, on Gwaine Hightower. I didn't expect to see Ulf the White. Dylan, I actually did, just based upon the fact that they're showing a lot of the minor characters for right now in the story, and they're giving them a lot more time. So I was really cool with the Ulf stuff. We'll get there as well, but I did like what we got with Ulf. Wasn't a victory for the Blacks in the book, the Blackwoods do win. But yeah. Maybe we'll see it, right? Maybe we're gonna see that Daemon comes and that's what kind of turns the tide and the Blackwoods win. I think that's probably what's gonna happen. So Jasper Wild does have some good takes. Violet, he has some good takes. Yeah, it's more a stalemate, but it's like kind of pronounced that it's kind of a Bracken win, but it's not really. Hi, Sage. How are you? Or I guess I should say no, Sage. I watched a reactor who was a casual fan ask who's Darren. Or Daron. That's never a good sign. But yeah, I mean, they just haven't done a great job of kind of introducing the character. Yeah, I hope we get to see some of the dragons. I mean, the fact that we haven't seen Sunfire and we're going to be, next episode, we're going to be halfway through the second season and we haven't seen Sunfire yet is kind of insane. Oh boy, Sage. You're not wrong, though. You're not wrong. Let's be honest. Is Rhaenyra really the best choice for the common people? I mean, here's the interesting part, right? That's the whole thing of the Dance of the Dragons. Neither of them are good rulers. Right? That's the whole point. But if we're gonna go off the show's logic, Rhaenyra is a better candidate for the king or queen, whatever. I think Aegon would be good if it wasn't wartime and he wasn't surrounded by people trying to manipulate him. Right? I think that's the interesting part. I just think both of them aren't incredibly strong rulers or great rulers. Simon Strong was refreshing. I agree. Simon Strong was just great. Looks like an old man Samuel Tarly. I do like that idea. Didn't enter the main room where the Great Council. That's another great moment as well. Arya, another great moment. The greens are right. I don't know about that one, Seek and Destroy. Violet, I hate to tell you this, but yeah, Nettles is gone. We'll see how that gets concluded. I won't say anything else. Seems like Helena's character is being expanded since she kind of disappears in the books after Jaehaerys' death. Yeah, and I think that's a good thing, Joey. I'm glad we're going to see more Helena. I really love, I think her name is Fia or something like that. She does a fantastic job with the character of Helena. I got to give her a lot of credit. I agree, Arya. That's where the episode should have ended. It should have ended with, Daemon with this dream state. You could have even expanded it if you want, because you would have had more time if you cut out the stuff with Alicent and Rhaenyra. You could have added more to it, and then added that at the very end, and that'd be the end. I really like that. I do agree, Space. I like that we're seeing more of the common people. What does Larys Strong gain from sowing division in Team Green? Well, think about it, right? He's getting a closer relationship with Aegon. He realizes where the actual power is, right? So he was at first getting very close to Alicent, right? Because and Otto, because they're the powerhouse of the Greens. Well, now that Aegon's actually on the throne, Aegon's the one making the decisions. He's the one that has the final say. You want to get close to him. You want to make yourself valuable to him. And just like that, now he's on the council, right? He's on the small council. So he is gaining more power. And also think about if Alicent's gone. Think about if all these characters are gone. Already Otto's gone. People are struggling now to try and control and manipulate Larys. Larys is now going to be able to do what he wants with Aegon. He's going to be able to allow to put things into the head of Aegon to make him do certain things. That is a tragedy, Arya, that was not in the episode. Alicent's character, I feel like the writers have nothing meaningful to do with her. So this is the big point, right, Ditto? Is Alicent is a character that doesn't have a lot to do post, when the dance starts, right? Because her work is more or less done. Her work is she wanted to place Aegon on the throne, in the book anyway. That's what we're kind of led to believe. Okay, after that point now, she doesn't have a dragon. She's not a powerful figure. And so the show is trying to craft ways, because Alicent, in my opinion, was the best written character of season 1 after Viserys. So she's kind of your main character outside of Rhaenyra. How do you take now a main character sliding into maybe a secondary role while others are expanding? So they tried to make up a bunch of things that gave Alicent more to do. Her relationship with Kristen Cole. This stuff with Rhaenyra. They tried to make stuff happen, and it hasn't always landed. Rhaenyra would be a good choice if her heir wasn't a bastard. That's the only problem. Well, Swift, why don't you if Jace is a bastard, just make the heir Aegon. Just like that. He's not a bastard, right? He was born from Daemon and her being together. You know who'd be a strong ruler? Jace. I like the wordplay, but I also think Jace would be a good ruler as well. PSA, thank you, Space. She does a fantastic job. One of the standouts. I don't think a lot of people talk about her as much as they should. She does a fantastic job. That as well, Matthew. That as well. I agree, Ghost. I would like to see, Helena with Dreamfire. That'd be great. Is Ned Dylan? I don't want to be the bearer of bad news, but she's not in the show. I can tell you right now, she's not in the show. It's been leaked already. It's pretty much public knowledge at this point. She's not in the episodes. I won't say what they're doing with that plot line because I don't want to spoil it for people that are watching this and don't know what's going to happen or what their plans are. But she is not in the show for a certain reason. I actually do like the way they're building into it from what I can tell. I don't know how they're going to, maybe, I don't know if they're going to stick the landing, but I like the way they're doing it so far, but yeah. I think we will, Ari. I think we will. Do you think the casual fans will care about Daemon since they cut him out of the first 2 seasons? Joey, they can always make people care about the character, right? As long as they introduce him well, establish his character in a meaningful way, he can always be good. Now, could he have been better if he was better established in earlier seasons? Yes. But think about Oberyn, right? He comes in for a season, and he's still one of the most iconic characters in Game of Thrones. They can still do that character justice in Daeron the Daring. Agreed, Arya. Agreed. Annie, I don't think it would have changed the war in terms of like the Greens going against her. I think the Greens still would have tried to attack her, but Are you surprised with the sex and nudity in this episode? Is how Us the Dragon was shied away from it compared to Game of Thrones. It's one of my negatives of the episode. Like outside of the major thing, the brothel scene it was too much to me. It was unnecessary sex and nudity. It was unnecessary. Completely unnecessary. You don't need to show those things. It didn't add anything to the episode. It just felt like maybe HBO being HBO, just forcing in nudity and stuff. That is interesting, Ghost, if that is true. Agreed, Arya. Agreed. She definitely is. Which I can't blame her, right? Jace is her child, right? It's different that, yes, she's technically the stepmother of Ayla and Rhaena because she's married to Daemon, but all right, so moving on. We do see Criston Cole and the Greens preparing to head out, and Gawain Hightower and Alicent speaking as she introduces him as they have a lot of tension, obviously. Think about what's going on here. 1. Otto Hightower has just been replaced by Criston Cole. Okay. Doesn't look great at all. Not in any regard, given that if you're a Hightower, that would piss you off quite a lot. 2, Criston Cole is very lowborn, which is another thing that would piss off someone like Gawain Hightower. And 3, it seems like he picks up on there being some sort of romantic chemistry between Alicent and him. So, yeah, there's a lot of bad juju there. A lot of bad juju. But as they're leaving, we also see, Criston and Alicent's goodbye, which I think was pretty solid. And we also see Cheese's corpse once again. A nice little transition of time shot. I like the shot, but Crow pecking at Cheese's corpse was always cool, or I guess his head, I should say. We see in the next scene Rhaenyra holding court as Rhaenys spots nothing coming from King's Landing as her counselors suggest action. And this is where we get to this point, right, where Rhaenyra doesn't want to do action. She doesn't want to go into this war. She doesn't want to have dragons against dragons and kin against kin and all of that. And it's kind of these people that are maybe a little bit more pragmatic of what's going on in this situation. There has to be a war. If there's going to be a war, why not get ahead of it and start actually taking the advantage, right? So all these people are trying to plan how to do this war, and Rhaenyra is kind of pushing back and not really wanting to do any of that stuff, right? And it even gets to this point where these guys are like, Rhaenyra, you're pretty vulnerable here. Why don't you leave so that they can rule? And it's a lot of that, again, sexism. It's men believing that women don't know how to do anything in war and all this stuff, and they have more kinder hearts. It's the exact same thing we see with, like, Catelyn in the King of the North chapter in Book 1, where she gets shut down because she's a woman, and apparently they can't think of anything in war or anything like that. And it's kind of that same vibe that I got here, and I think it was handled really well. Rhaenyra saying it's treason and all this stuff, kind of lashing out a little bit. Again, showing a little bit of that fiery side. And I do love, whenever we get little Targaryen lore drops with Rhaenys talking about, Rhaenyra's crown being Jaehaerys's, the best king in Targaryen history in his long reign. I did like the scene a lot. I think it did a lot for a lot of the different characters, and a pretty good scene to establish kind of what's going on in the Black Camp and things that will follow and how that will affect later courses of action. We also then get another pretty good scene with Corlys and Rhaenys. It has a lot of foreboding and building up a lot of tension as the war continues and rages on. Corlys and Rhaenys still talking about the succession in terms of, Driftmark and the Velaryon name. Who is going to take that up? As of right now, it's Joffrey, but Joffrey is kind of too young. And also Joffrey, Rhaenys and Corlys aren't stupid. They know he's a strong. It's a weird spot because who else do you have to turn to, right? With Baela and Rhaena, like you could, argue one of them, and Rhaenys argues Rhaena, but it's like none of them really fit what Corlys wants, right? Corlys is a sailor. He's made all of his wealth being this great, captain, of his ships and things like that, being a good sailor. And, Rhaena and Joffrey just don't fit that. They don't fit that mold. And so it opens the door for things that we're going to see in the future. And so it's a nice little mark to that, but it's also like, Rhaenys is trying to push, we got to get this figured out now. We're in the middle of a war. Something could happen at any time. It's a great way of building that foreboding. If you think about even like in, war or right before wars are happening, think about, World War II or any of these world conflicts. People are going to start marrying, their girlfriends or their whoever they're with, because there's a chance you may not see them again. They may die during this conflict. I think that was it's kind of the vibe I got from the scene. I just think Rhaenys and Corlys, every scene they're together is a fantastic scene. It's why I wish we had more of them. It's why I and many others complained that we didn't get as much Velaryon stuff in the first season. This is why. I think the two have fantastic chemistry. They're two of the best, I think, actors on the show, and they don't really get to show it off a lot. It gives me a lot of, like, Patty with Viserys, right? One of the more older actors, but unfortunately, just Corlys and Rhaenys don't have a lot of that screen time throughout the seasons. And, but we end on a pretty dark kind of tone, maybe foreshadowing something happening to Corlys, right? He's the captain, right? He's already taken a severe injury and had to be saved. So it is interesting. We get another scene where it's I actually skipped something. I think. We also have a scene with Rhaenyra talking to Rhaena, telling her that she has to go with her sons. She has to be a mother to them. And it's a great conflicting scene because you know exactly why Rhaenyra is doing it, right? You want somebody that you can trust to look over your sons, and also Rhaena doesn't have a dragon, so she's not the most useful person at this time. And Rhaena kind of looks at it too. It's like, you're shipping me away because you seem like I have no value and stuff like that. And so it really plays into how Rhaena feels, not being able to have a dragon while everybody else around her does. It plays into that really nice. And so then we're going to skip back into where I was. So Rhaena then, she has to leave with the children, and she's, saying her goodbyes. We get, the dragons that are coming with them, and there's dragon eggs being taken with them. As Rhaena's given a pretty important job. She has to treat with Lady Arryn, get the ball rolling. Rhaenyra needs these soldiers and all that stuff. And, she speaks with her sister, who tries to comfort her and trying to show her role, right? Rhaenyra tells Rhaena, if things go bad, you and my sons basically hold, the future. You guys are the future. So that's a big moment, as well as like Rhaenyra kind of giving them dragon eggs as well, kind of just inferring that, Rhaena will eventually have a dragon. And also I think the moment where Rhaenyra has to let go of her children, right? Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys is kind of heartbreaking, you know? It's this moment where, you know, Rhaenyra has been driven based upon Luke's death and the assassination attempt that she can't have the things closest to her in harm's way. She needs to get them out of the way. They're the innocents. You really feel for Rhaenyra in this scene. But it also, once again, goes to this idea that Rhaenyra is someone that is very smart in terms of emotional intelligence, putting aside her own emotion, how she feels, and is willing to, you know, put her children in safety. Think about Cersei. She's not willing to do that, right? She doesn't do that in Clash of Kings, right? She doesn't see maybe some of the wisdom Tyrion has of sending Marcella away, or how, you know, he takes Tommen. Like, it shows Rhaenyra and that emotional intelligence that I think is so fascinating, because this doesn't really play out the same way in the book, where it's like Jace is the one kind of taking action and doing these things, and it is interesting the way that they handled it. But we do then see Baela and Rhaena embrace, and we cut from the scene. All right. See if anybody else has something they are saying in chat. Why would they cut Nettles? I think there's a certain reason why they're doing so, but we'll just have to see how it goes. I agree, ditto, on the nudity stuff. It just was weird. While the scene was meant to show how Aegon... Agreed, Arya, I liked that part of it, but there's aspects I don't like, where it's like, why are we opening up all these curtains for just sex that doesn't matter? Just have Aegon go to where he was, or have those rooms be empty, or whatever. Like, you don't need to be showing this stuff on screen. Like, Aemond, right, when he's, like, about to leave, and we have to have basically a zoom in of his dick, basically. It's like, is this necessary? And I'm just saying it because Aemon's a dude. Like, I say that just in general, right? Like, why can't we have a shot where it's just, like, this and up? Like, I don't know. It just seems like having nudity to have nudity, which is like, doesn't serve a purpose. I want Rhaenyra to meet Ulf. Maybe it'll happen at some point. Agreed. Ghost agreed. Yeah, in the books, Kristen is from the Stormlands, and in the show, he's from Dorne. I have a question. Did the Arryn ruler expect Targaryen to stay in the Vale forever with a dragon, or is it a temporary? So it was a temporary arrangement, right? It was supposed to be just like you have some protection at least, right? Now, there is a bit of a difference because Joffrey is a bit older than he is in the show. So it was not as like, oh, it wasn't as, you know, it wasn't as bad. But it's just supposed to be like, oh yeah, you know, as Joffrey gets older, as this dragon gets older, you'll have more of a kind of a protection. Hi, Ashley. How are you? That'd be interesting, right, Space? I think she's already kind of started to, though, right? Like, in terms of, you know, Drogon seems to show up when she's only in, you know, emotional turmoil and things like that. I think that's already started, but it will be interesting to see how that goes further, right? I'm so shocked at the appearance of Aemon's whore. Yes, definitely interesting. We may get with more visions, Ditto. Might see Patty. We might see Patty with Daemon again. That'd be cool. So, Matthew, the way I think it's going to happen is I think Otto has probably already sent those letters to the Triarchy. That's kind of the first episode or two is where, you know, Otto's talking about sending letters and all these things. I think that's going to bear fruit later on, right? That it's just a delayed reaction, because we know with the Triarchy, it takes a long time for them to decide to do anything. So, yeah. Sad, not ready for next week. Ashley, I will be here for your emotional support. That's all I can say. All right, let's move on. We then get a scene with Helena and Allison talking about the events of Blood and Cheese. I really liked this idea, right? Because Helena feels guilty for being sad. It's something that you should never really feel guilty. You should never feel guilty for losing a loved one or any of these things. But it's interesting the way she rationalizes it, right? Like talking about how others probably suffer much more than she does. And, she doesn't feel like she has the right to be sad, right? What about all of these people that, are starving, can't find any food because of the blockade of the gullet right now? There's not a lot of food coming into King's Landing. That was foreshadowed, kind of in was it last episode with you? Yeah, last episode with you. I think it's a really interesting moment how Helena seems so disconnected from people, right? But at the same time, she actually is very human and feeling kind of their pain. Why should she be able to grieve when all these other people have probably much more to grieve about? It's interesting the way she rationalizes. I love the way this scene was written because, of course, Helena should be able to grieve. She witnessed a horrifying thing, but at the same time, it's interesting the way that they go about developing that scene. But even as it goes on, she says that she forgives her mother. Again, just kind of building the tragedy of what that event even entailed, right? Her mother having sex with Kristen Cole, which is something that could have prevented everything from happening, and Helena forgives her. It's a really good moment. I liked that scene. It was definitely, to me, a highlight. I really liked the way that, back in Game of Thrones, you always had that, where it was something that you could put in your brain and think about it, and try to rationalize, what she's actually saying. I really enjoyed that from Helena. We get Aegon then being armored up as he is interrupted by Larys as he attempts to make Aegon not fly, kind of putting things into his head that people are whispering that, he's basically going to leave and Alicent's going to try and take power, that they were manipulating him to actually go with Kristen Cole, turning Aegon to not go and, using that and Larys getting into the council, the small council, having more influence and all that stuff. And even Aegon's demeanor in terms of going out, right? Interesting, because you see those two sides of Aegon where he's trying to become an adult, become his own king, but at the same time, he's still just, a kid or a teenager, a colleger, basically. And yeah, it's interesting the way that we see that Aegon is still kind of dealing with a lot of things going on in his mind. Which leads us to the Ulf the White scene. So, Ulf the White scene I really liked, right? You get this idea of this guy being this tavern talking guy. He gives you the feeling of like a D&D character. You go into a tavern, you have this guy, and he's like, what can you even believe from this guy? Saying that he's a Targaryen and all this stuff, and you're paying for him for this story and all this stuff. And he says that he is a bastard of Balon the Brave. Now, I found this fascinating. I personally don't think that's the case at all. I think he was definitely lying. Based upon the way Balon is written as a character, he doesn't seem like that character, right? He loved his sister wife a lot. Like, they seem to have a very fierce connection. And yes, there was a lot of time before Balon dies, but never are we indicated in the book, right, that Balon had any type of female relations. It's not unheard of, right? I won't say it's impossible, but I think based on the way I interpret the character of Balon the Brave, I don't think he would have made a bastard at any point. And I think if he would have made a bastard and he knew about it, I think Balon would have actually cared. So, I don't know. I think it's probably a lie. I don't think that Balon's like a half-brother of like Daemon and Viserys or something like that. But it was an interesting story, right? It does kind of tease your brain a little bit. And also just Balon being named, always a cool time. Well, but we see that Ulf is, eventually he gets questioned, like his hair doesn't look like the Targaryens. And he's like, well, the rightful heir, Jace, his hair color isn't, silver like the Targaryens. And unfortunately, Ulf has probably got the worst timing known to mankind, because at this, Aegon walks in. But Aegon is kind of a boy's boy, I guess, buying everybody drinks. It's on him, it's on the crown. And, yeah, let me check chat before I continue, and we'll kind of finish out this episode. I had a lump in my throat during that Rhaenys Corlys scene. Yes, it was a very good scene, though. It really sets up, the next episode really, really well. People who haven't read the books, prepare for next week. Yes, it should be definitely a really good one. Off of Ricky's scale, it is the second best of the first four, which is interesting, right? Because based upon the events that happen, I would assume it actually would be number one. But I'll be interested to see how they execute it. Very different story happening for Helena. Agreed. My mom is gonna be devastated. Oh boy. I mean, Daenerys could dream about a lot of different things, space, right? She has these dragon dreams, but also you think about, her in book 2, seeing all these different visions, seeing all these things. She could dream about, her father. She could dream about Rhaenyra, someone that's very similar to Daenerys in a lot of ways. Definitely could be something that we could see in the book. What do you think Alicent would do without Cole being around now? I think a lot of her arc is going to be based upon... I can't say a lot because I don't want to spoil things that are going to happen in the next episode. But there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in terms of reactionary stuff to what happens in the next episode. So, again, I think it's still going to be Alicent battling for power, right? Her influence. Where is she going to be in terms of that? I think Ulf is just full of shit. Agreed. I think something funny on Instagram about Ulf. I'll have to check that out. Matthew. Yeah, I don't think so. Not Balon. I don't think he has any dissension from Balon. It does pose the question, though. Where does Ulf get his Targaryen lineage from? Could be interesting. Agreed. They are definitely painting them in a better light in the show, but in the book, they are kind of ass. You think we'll see a Velaryon naval battle this season? No, Joey. I think it'll be next season. Very beginning of next season. He kind of looks like a mix between Daemon and Viserys, though, my mother said. Well, yeah, he's going to have some of those Targaryen features. I watched this episode with my mom. It's traumatic. Yeah, the brothel scene must have been very awkward. This is the one episode. I watched the first two with my dad. I did not watch this episode with him. It was just too late. Why can't we get more Rhaenys, Corlys, as opposed to Kristen, Alicent? And this is the reason, right, Ashley? Alicent is a main character. And so Kristen's going to get more screen time because he's adjacent to Alicent, whereas Rhaenys and Corlys were secondary characters in the first season, so they're going to spend more time with them, which I think is stupid. I think it should be the opposite, like you said. We should get more time with Rhaenys and Corlys. They're more vital to this season than Kristen and Alicent are. All I gotta say is I enjoyed the tavern scene. Also, greetings, small folk. Hello, Aegon. It was actually crazy to see you and Aegor in the same stream last night. That was actually insane to me. That put a smile on my face. But Aegon, you're always welcome. Always welcome here. We then see Aegon taking them into the brothel, his companions, after they've been drunk, and Aegon is absolutely plastered, okay? And we're getting to see all this nice sex stuff, and I'm just like, okay, all right, let's just get to the point here. And he finds Aemond, who is, basically in his only safe place, more or less. It's the best way to put it. He has no other place to go. He can't show emotion. He has to be this cruel, vile guy. He kills Luke, and he has his reputation to uphold, and he has nobody he can go to. He doesn't have a mother he can go to, really. He doesn't have a father. His siblings he doesn't really seem like he can go to. It's his last safe place. It seems like, it's the last human part of Aemond kind of dying in this episode, right? With Aegon mocking him, making fun of him, even though maybe Aegon's piss-ass drunk and doesn't know what he's saying, maybe. It's kind of that last part of humanity, that last thing holding Aemond back from, hurting the small folk, like, the sex worker said in like the last episode with Aemond. Kind of that dying. It's kind of that cruel part of Aemond, that fiery side of him kind of winning out in that battle. But after this, we see Rhaenyra packing up her son's toys the whole time, being troubled by it, right? The lengths she's had to go to now, right? Where she's had to now remove all of her sons from her outside of Jace. It's a really hard scene to watch if you're thinking about it from being a mother and all of that. And at this, she opens the letter that Alicent sent after her sons. Obviously, prompting to where we're eventually going to go with the Alicent and Rhaenyra stuff. We then see probably one of the better scenes as well from this episode with Gwaine Hightower and Cole fighting over him going to this inn to get drunk and all this stuff. And again, just kind of playing at war, not taking things that seriously. When they are interrupted by Baela as she descends on them with her dragon, which looks pretty good. I love the design of it. Very unique. But she almost is able to kill them, but they do obey. And we instantly go to Baela reporting these findings, finding Criston Cole, and Rhaenyra kind of does what she does in the last council meeting. He stalls, doesn't really do anything. Everyone's telling her to go to action, and Rhaenyra is even kind of mad at Baela because she wasn't supposed to get that close. She was supposed to stay high up. But they think, hey, attack them, right? This host is going towards all these different, keeps. We need to act. We need to take them out. Get on our dragons and take out this army. And Rhaenyra's like, thank you for your counsel, but I'll think about it. You basically got left on red, more or less. And it's, again, more of Rhaenyra being passive, not wanting to start dragon conflict because that's going to invite more dragon battles, right? With Aegar, with Sunfire, all these things. And this goes to where the episode should have ended. This is where the episode should have ended. We should not have gotten the last, 15 minutes after this scene, but we get Daemon, and he's in his room, and he's having these dreams or these visions or his hallucinations, and somebody apparently starts trying to break into his room, and it's disgusting because there's water falling from the ceilings in his chambers, and and then he's following this noise he hears, and it's who other than Millie herself. It was great to see her again. The GOAT. The best Rhaenyra. And the woman of my Valentine's YouTube short. If you haven't seen it, watch it. It's fantastic. And yeah, it's just very horrifying, right? It shows that Daemon is still kind of worried about what he did to Rhaenyra. Taking basically her innocence away from her. The things that he's done to her. This innocent child was killed because of him and how Rhaenyra's had to deal with that, and all of Daemon's impulsive actions are coming kind of back up and creeping back up on him. So much that he drops his sword and he's by this weirwood tree that seems so disconnected and just kind of all over the place. And so you get all of that, and you then get Alice Rivers then showing up and saying that he will die here. Which I will say, the line delivery for it wasn't great. I rewatched it the second time because the first time I didn't notice it too much, and kind of chat was like, it wasn't that great. Second rewatch, I paid attention to it more. I wasn't the biggest fan of the line delivery, but we'll see as the character goes forward. But just didn't really feel right. It feels like they should have probably tried that again, but I don't know. It wasn't that big of a deal. I liked what they were going for. I think it should have been the end of the episode, but unfortunately, it's not. So we then jump to Rhaenyra going to speak with Mysaria, and I'm going to be honest. I kind of saw this coming. Even at the beginning of the season, just based upon where they were going with Alice and Rhaenyra's relationship, I felt like this was coming. I just didn't think it would be done this poorly and this badly. But she goes to Mysaria asking how she can get to Alicent. And we've talked about this at length, so I'm not going to talk about it over and over again. But she gets a ship, similar to Daemon. She dresses up as a septa and sneaks her way into talking to Alicent. And they talk about, you killed Luke, and, it was just Aemon that did that. And, Jaehaerys' death, and going back and talking about at the end of episode 8 when Alicent thought it was Aegon that Viserys wanted, which I talked about in length why that was really stupid, and it was more confirmation bias. It was, Alicent looking for anything to put her son on the throne. She's been planning for years and years and years at this point to put her son on the throne. I don't buy the explanation in the show that Alicent wasn't doing that and it was all Otto. That just doesn't make any sense if you rewatch season 1. So for me, the conversation is weird to analyze because it makes, for it to have a lot of impact on you, you have to believe what happened in season 1, and I didn't like that. I thought it was the one thing that really hurt Alicent's character. It kind of was the one thing that kept her from not being like a perfect character in season 1. And so you get that, and it's like, okay, well, what does this whole conversation do for either character? Alicent becomes more guilty because she misinterpreted this Viserys thing, which I think she already doubted anyway. And so, okay, well, she feels more guilt. She doesn't need to feel more guilt. She already has all the guilt in the world. Blood and cheese, starting of the war, Luke's death, Jaehaerys' death. There's so much guilt there that doesn't add anything else to Alicent at this point, right? She already has that guilt. She already has, the candle scene, right? Where she's, lighting a candle for all these people that she feels like she has wronged or died because of her actions. For Rhaenyra, what does it do? It confirms that her father wanted her to be the heir, which she already believed anyway. And then it also confirms that there is no peace that's going to happen, which she should have already realized, right? She has all this emotional intelligence, all this stuff, but she can't realize that the war isn't going to be stopped by talking to Alicent. Like, it doesn't change anything, right? It's a big scene that's meant to be this huge moment, but it doesn't feel that earned. It doesn't feel like it works in terms of the logic. It's a scene that if you took it and you put it in the beginning of season 3, would be so much better. It would be probably a fantastic scene because it's them going through this war where thousands of people have died. Certain things have, happened. People have, that are close to them have died. They're going to be changed. Maybe Rhaenyra is more fiery. She's more aggressive. Alicent, maybe she's more cold. She's, less emotional. She's just calculated. Maybe it's because these characters have grown so much that the war has changed them. Like how we see so much with soldiers and things. They come back completely different people. And, when they talk later on and they think, wow, it was just maybe just this big understanding and all of this, but they're too far gone at this point. And, how that shapes them, how they think back at their lives. It could have worked so much better than it did, but they rushed the scene. They rushed it because they felt like episode 3 didn't have that punch that episode 4, 2, and 1 did. And that's the reason I think it's here. They felt like they needed something, and they didn't. All they needed to do was do the Harrenhal stuff. Maybe expand it. Maybe expand it more. Give us more of the Harrenhal stuff, and this episode would have been good. It just messed up the ending once again. I don't know. That's the way I look at it. I know certain people don't agree, but that's the way I look at it. Do you think we will see Corlys realize Adam and Alan are his bastard sons? I think we'll definitely see, Adam and Alan being more prominent in the show. They kind of fit this gap where it seems like they definitely could be his, and I think we probably will see that, Joe. We see Laenor again, or did they keep him alive in the show for no reason? I'm conflicted. I feel like we have to see something with Laenor again. And I kind of think I know a moment they could do it, but I do think we have to see him again. Aegon, I respect it. I respect that. Whoa, 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 Dylan! Don't be throwing things at Aegon the Fourth. We all have made mistakes in our lives, but let's keep it civil. Let's keep it civil. Aegon, he's a respectable guy. He's a respectable guy. Could you imagine, though, if it gets out to, her council that she did that? Could you imagine being, you're just one of these lords in Rhaenyra's council, and you hear, yeah, she snuck away to go talk to Alicent in King's Landing. Could you imagine? Could you imagine reacting that? I don't know. Whoa, 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 Grease. I thought you liked Selena. What do you mean? Ashley. It's been from day one. Well, okay. Day one of House of the Dragon. Millie is my woman. Okay, Selena Gomez is a good, like, second. Selena Gomez was the younger crush of mine, but now it's Millie. But also, we're like a lot closer in age. Like, we're the same age, so it works better. Yeah. A man can dream, that's all I gotta say. Whoa, calling Daemon a fool is kind of wild. That's all I'm gonna say. The ending to the episode was like the reverse of Robert and Cersei's conversation back in Thrones Season 1. A dialogue-heavy scene original to the show. One worked, the other did not. The fuck is Harold Westling? He's fucking around, dude. He's fine in Strong Bellis. That's what he's doing. Matthew, I agree. I could definitely see that happening. The Harrenhal stuff was peak television. I agree, Dylan. Hi, Bridget. How are you? If that is the case, if Laenor died, like, off screen, and they don't say anything about it, that's kind of that's whack to me. I don't know. I could see it. I just don't think that's very compelling. I don't find that to be satisfying at all. I think why didn't you? If that's the case, Ashley, and they killed him off screen, it's not really going to be mentioned. Why didn't they just kill him in season 1? It doesn't make sense. Not. I'm surprised Olivia Cook isn't your crush. She's a green. Sorry. She's playing my least favorite character. Well, she's not actually I like the character of Allison in the book, but she's against Rainier. That's treason. I can't do that. She's an attractive lady, but not for me. Not for me. Well, Matthew, that's all I'm going to say is Rainey's had some unfortunate things happen. That's all I'm going to say. But that's all and all I got to say is Millie, here's Millie, right? She's like all the way up here. And then there's Olivia Cook. It's like way down here. It's like, yeah, still attractive, but like Millie's just better. That's all I got to say. But yeah. So that'll be the stream, guys. My voice is kind of dying. I've done a lot of stuff today. I hope you guys all enjoyed. Adam Valerian's an attractive dude, but I'm straight, so I can't put Adam Valerian above Millie. That's just, unless we're talking about Samwell Tarly. You know, Samwell Tarly, pretty hot. He's pretty hot. But I hope you guys all enjoyed, and I'll see you guys all in the next stream. Also, remember, I'm going to be doing preview stream and after the episode streams on Sundays now. So